Hi, my name is Rebecca Johnson with Gloria Mack. Thanks for joining me today. Our topic of discussion is the FCC's Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, Notice of Inquiry, often referred to as NPRM NOI, that they submitted a few months ago. And several entities have since responded with their comments in the first week of July, along with what I was so happy to see was consumers who are exercising their rights to communicate, because the FCC does want to hear from you. They do care. So I was glad to see the responses. I have reviewed the responses, and here's what we're looking at within that particular notice that was sent out. Two kind of main topics. The first one on the proposed rulemaking is the FCC saying, hey, we want to give the consumers some controls. What are your thoughts on that? Give us some feedback on how we can do that. This is a result of the robocall strike force that ended early this year. I was a part of that particular strike force. So it's just a continuation of the efforts and all the hard work that all of the entities put into developing a plan. And now it's moving forward through the process. I don't think anybody is against giving consumer control. That was a resounding yes, let's do it. Because we're all consumers who receive these annoying phone calls. So lots of opinions, lots of thoughts were presented from the consumer side to the telecommunications side, even to from the enterprise side, from a commercial perspective, the ones who are actually delivering phone calls on behalf of their consumers. So the main thing that I see from that is that there needs to be a balance. We have to strike a balance between the controls that we give consumers, and we also don't want to give out controls where the consumer is over-blocking calls that they may want to receive. So there's still discussions that need to be had. With regards to the notice of inquiry, that kind of falls in line with what I just talked about with regards to the over-blocking. What we don't want to see is blocking of legitimate, legal, lawful calls, which could happen if we run these analytics and start labeling and blocking calls that appear to maybe be illegal, but they actually aren't. Maybe it's just that consumers don't want calls. Now, want is a new word that doesn't get used often, but it weaves its way in whenever we're discussing this particular topic on the robocalls. There is this concept between blocking illegal calls. We're talking those IRS scams, the Caribbean cruises that, you don't even go cruising, and they're calling you and telling you've won this or whatever. Those we no doubt, those need to stop. And if the carriers can block them, if your providers can block them before they get to your phone, all for it. But what about those unwanted calls? And I think the consumer should have a right. I'm a consumer. I should have a right to say, you know what? I don't want this call. It could be completely legal. Completely legal. And you may have provided your consent, but you don't want to receive the phone call. So we need to have a lot more discussion around that. There needs to be some consistency from a consumer's perspective on what does it look like when I want to label a call as unwanted, and what do I want my provider, my phone provider, to do with that when I say I don't want this phone call. So lots more discussions. Again, that was under the NOI aspect that was delivered out. So it just means let's get this conversation started. I obviously have a lot to say about it, and you will hear more from me on this particular topic. It's going to be in a little bit more organized fashion, but I can say that at a baseline, everybody is in agreement. Let's stop these fraudulent calls, the truly fraudulent calls that are, exposing your grandmother to sending money to her nephew or grandson. We've all seen those. Those have happened to us too. So all on agreement on that particular one. But we still need to have further conversations around what about those legal calls that I already have a relationship with the entity that I'm calling, and they've provided consent for me to call them. Therefore, who's allowed to block those calls? And if consumers do get to block them, what's the communication back to the legal entity that has that relationship with the consumer? Pandora's box is what we are opening. It is a little bit of a legal nightmare, but it would make for really good conversations, heated conversations, and I'm ready for it. I think we should have those conversations. So Thanks for joining me. If I've confused you on any of these topics, that probably means you're not really involved in this particular industry, but if you're interested, read up on my blog and you can get caught up to speed. It's a very fun, exciting industry to be in. There's technology advancements that are still happening and lots of opportunities ahead. So, just follow me and check out my next video. Thanks for joining me today.